tackled. But next, I wanted to bring Pere into our meetup, and we're going to be showing AskCollate. So Pere, please take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, Nick. And yeah, thank you, David, for the amazing demo. Let me jump to this slide. Okay, awesome. Great. So as we know, the data landscape is changing rapidly, right? Every day there's new sources, new data that we have to ingest, new ways that we can move this data from layer to layer in order to create dashboards, ML models, whatever it is that we need in order to drive and create value in our organization. But it's not only the data that keeps growing, it's also the complexity of the data and the complexity of the platforms that we're interacting with. So a fundamental challenge is that all of this critical knowledge ends up siloed in all of these different tools owned by many different teams. And we are lacking kind of this global 360 view of what it is that it's happening in our organization, right? So this work that we have pioneered with OpenMetadata and Collate over the past few years has been actually focused on addressing this exact problem. How can we make sense of all of this scattered information? So we have been able to accomplish this by defining and implementing an open source metadata standard, right? This allows us to effectively translate each piece of information from all of these different systems, be it your warehouses, be it your pipelining systems, your dashboard systems, basically just gather all of that information and translate it, put it into a single source of truth. And bit by bit, while we keep gathering this information, we have been building this metadata graph that it's covering your entire stack, which in the end is there to empower our users with seamless data discovery, data observability, as David was showing just now, as well as data governance. So this has become the main foundation of OpenMetadata. This API and this schema-first implementation of these standards that are allowing us to create a very extensible architecture so that each organization can plug in the relevant pieces of information from anywhere in their data ecosystem. Now, once this data is centralized, that's great, but we need to understand that data alone does not really solve any problems because actually data does not live in isolation, right? Data only gains value when it's contextualized within your organization and within your business, which means that we should not stop at understanding the data. We should actually go one step beyond and figure out how is this data being used, who owns this data, what's the impact of each specific asset, what's the impact of a specific change that I need to do. And not only that, but actually the questions and the answers that different user personas are going to expect from our data is also going to be different because the use case, the technical capabilities, the projects, the goals from a data scientist, a data engineer, or a data analyst are going to be completely different. But in the end, they should still be able to work together on a single tool, leverage this unified experience, and build solutions on this single source of truth for everything that's happening around the data in the organization. So if we have been able to actually build this experience for people, this means that, okay, we should also be able to bring all of this context for AI tooling as well. So what we are bringing on top of the table now with Collate is this ability to transform this unified knowledge graph into knowledge units that go far beyond of giving the LLM access to the schema of our tables, but actually contextualizing this schema and this metadata, these technical pieces of information with the importance of an asset within our organization, the specific meaning, thank you to the integrations with tools like the glossary or the knowledge center, or even how are all of these pieces of information currently being used, who owns them, and how this information flows and is transformed through our pipelines. And we are not only able to achieve this via the embeddings and whatnot, but actually by leveraging the organization's vocabulary and all of these super rich and complex relationships that are actually representing the reality of our business, of our data, of our people, right? That's why we announced in our past summit, we announced AskCollate, which is this AI agent that it's providing conversational analytics and data management capabilities that it's built on top of this knowledge graph foundation that we have in there. Now, to illustrate the power of the system, let us consider a common business objective. Let's imagine that we're a company and we are trying to improve our customer experience and optimize the revenue for a new product, line. So we would have all of these different personas scattered across the organization, and they will be focused on answering questions around this data. But we will demonstrate even how these different personas can achieve all of their goals within the same platform. Now, as a data steward, this is going to be my first step, right? I need to make sure that we are properly organizing the information in our data platform. So to do so, I'm going to get help from AskCollate to figure things out quickly. Now, my first step will be, okay, do you have an information that is describing our customer data? So I'm going to ask this to AskCollate, and it's going to search and pick up any relevant pieces of information that I have across the platform. And what I can see here is that we have a bunch of tables about customers, but I can also see an interesting article. So I can say, okay, AskCollate, can you please give me further details about this article here? So the interesting part is that AskCollate is not only answering questions based on our structured data. It's not only about tables or dashboards or pipelines, but also is actually able to reason and understand this free-form text that we have previously defined in the knowledge center. So that this means that it's now actually kind of easier than ever to pull up what our policies, our how-tos, any kind of relevant documentation that it's going to make our lives easier around data. So now I let the agent pick this information. It's giving me a summary of this article. I can directly jump now into the knowledge center. I can dig a bit deeper into the information, and I can see that there's actually some relevant pieces in there that I might want to pull the thread upon. And this is where the even more interesting part comes into play, because now I can ask AskCollate to say, okay, I want you to transform this information that you've pulled here into customer glossary terms. So what it's going to happen here is that I'm taking all of this unstructured content, all of this free text that I've put into my knowledge center, and I'm going to be able to structure it in a way, position it within our knowledge graph so that I can continue to activate this knowledge, to use this knowledge within my organization, so that whenever AskCollate has finished creating all of these glossary terms, then I can keep pulling the thread. I can start patching this information into my tables, into my dashboards, into whatever it is that it makes sense. And now I'm just going to speed this up because it's just going to be picking and creating the different glossaries based on the information that it's found in the system. And finally, it's going to show them to me. I can comment them. I can figure out, are they good enough? Do I need to change something to make a bit of more sense of the information that it's there? But as you can see, AskCollate helps us finding the right pieces of information, be it structured, be it not structured, and helps us speed up this translation process of figuring out the vast amounts of information that we have in our system and put it in a place, in this case, the glossary, that will help us activate it and use it further. And with that being said, Thomas, I'm going to pass the word to you so that you can play with the rest of the use case.
Thank you, Pere. Let me quickly share my screen. All right, guys. For this demo, I'm going to be serving the data analyst role, and I've been asked to analyze how are the eco-friendly products of our company performing, right? So I'll just go right away and simply ask that to AskCollate. I need to assess how are my eco-friendly products performing and help me in searching for gold certified assets. I want to make sure that I'm using production ready data, right? And like as Pere showed, only in a matter of seconds, it is able to go through my entire data catalog, go through Snowflake, Redshift, all of this, and it found some relevant results there, right? Assets from Snowflake, Redshift, Tableau. And for this particular scenario, I'll tell it to focus on Snowflake, and I'll start with some market share analysis. I'll ask it to give me, how are my eco-friendly performing in terms of market share. So that's what I'll request as a follow-up prompt to AskCollate. And there are a couple of things going on here behind the scenes, but on a high level, it is actually transforming our natural language query into a SQL query, and it's going to be executing that against the actual data warehouse and bringing back the summary of the results, right? Once that's done, it will be analyzed and it will be telling us interesting insights here. For instance, it is telling us that roughly 40% of the sales have come from eco-friendly product, which is significant there. And we are also receiving the SQL that was actually executed, right? For reference, for storage, if we want to execute it on a follow-up occasion or actually in the data warehouse. And after that, we also have some capabilities here in AskCollate to generate some visualizations, right? Now, the cool things here is that these visualizations are kind of live. We can iterate on them. So for instance, maybe this a bit too much of a bright green color for me. So I'll just ask it to make it a bit more subtle, make it on a dark green. And also maybe this description may be a bit too, we could take advantage of this ink, let's say, and make it a bit more insightful right away. So that's what I'll be asking AskCollate. And we can keep iterating on this until, it serves our purposes, until we're happy with it. Here, as you can see, it changed the color, it changed the description. And just for one final iteration, here, these two data points add up to 100% of the market share. So maybe there's a case here for a donut chart. And that's what I'll be asking in this following prompt, right? And also maybe I want to highlight the share of the eco-friendly products. So I'll also tell it to just keep it in gray color, the non-eco-friendly share. And yeah, that's what I'll be sharing here. So we can do this. We can do some iterations, execute some other SQL analysis, some other plots, and one by one, we'll be building our dashboard in seconds without actually leaving the chat. Cool. I also told it here to make it in percentages, which is what it's doing now, which is what it did actually. And just to wrap it up, I'll tell it to tell me what are our bestseller, let's say, what are our best performing eco-friendly products. And this is let's say the last query that I'll be requesting to AskCollate. And as I said, here it's a lot of steps going on behind the scenes and in order to give us these final results. So it will be working through it, executing the query. We can always go and see step by step what is going on. And so we get a sense on the progress that we're making. And here we see the results. We can see the organic cotton t-shirt as the best seller, followed by a toothbrush, so on and so forth. Again, we have access to the SQL query. Now, I also notice here that there's some negative revenue for the beach chair product, which is kind of weird. And this is probably requiring some further analysis, some data quality analysis, which is actually serving the floor for the next demo that we'll be having, which will be served by the engineering team, in which we'll look at what may be happening here and why we're receiving a negative revenue for a given product. But just to wrap it up, only in a couple of minutes, we were able to search through our entire data catalog. We transformed business questions into SQL queries and actually executed them against our data warehouse. We created and iterated on some visualization until it reached the point that we wanted and our style. And we even caught up a potential data quality issue. This all through conversational manner in a matter of seconds and without actually leaving the chat. So yeah, now I'll leave the floor to Teddy, who will be continuing with this.
All right, awesome. Thank you, Thomas. So let me share my screen. All right, perfect. So as Thomas mentioned, we are going to now go over the observability side. So understanding what is happening with the negative values inside our product revenue. So we'll take on, the hat of a data engineer. So, so the first thing that we generally will want to understand is, okay, I have some customers 360 table that is aggregating a bunch of different data for my eco product. And I want to understand how is that data fed? How is that data generated, right? So we can go ahead and simply AskCollate, right? And then if AskCollate finds the same occurrence across different services, it will tell you, right? So that you as a human can, specify and specify which table you are trying to look for, right? And so as you can see, once we specify, then AskCollate is smart enough to go ahead and generate the results, and we'll have the dynamic graph of our lineage as well as a summary of the data that are available inside AskCollate, right? So we have that full summary that is present that we can actually interact with that dynamic component that you are probably familiar with when you are interacting with Collate. That same dynamic component is now present inside AskCollate, and you can have a quick understanding of how data are generated. Perfect. So then the next step that we want to do once we have an understanding is to see, do we have any failing test for that specific table, right? So we have a summary, and here we have no tests that have been defined for that specific table, right? So we have some components that are missing, right? And so what we want to do now is to, further that analysis and try to understand, okay, we have no data quality tests that have been defined here in our customer 360 table, but do I have any anomalies that do exist inside the tables that are feeding my customer 360 table, right? And you can see that AskCollate will start analyzing the profiling data, the sample data, the metadata, basically kind of gathering information about these tables that are generating the customer 360 table, and it will give us a full summary, a full report of the information that it finds, right? And we can see that it has highlighted two critical anomalies inside two tables actually that are used to generate our customer 360 table, right? We can see order items as some negative value, right? So that's what we have seen in the total amount. And we can also see that inside our product table, right? Product table that is feeding into those tables, we have some negative unit price, right? And from there, we can quickly see that we most likely should not have a negative unit price for a specific product, right? Because generally, customers spend money to purchase product, and we don't give them money when they are purchasing product. So that is probably something that we should go ahead and start addressing by resolving it inside our table. But we should also start monitoring it, right? As we can see, we had no previous data quality tests that were generated for that specific tables that are used for our customer 360 table. So we probably want to start adding data quality tests, right? So we can either manually add it, or we can ask Collate to go ahead and, based on the context that it has on the metadata that are used to generate that table, the statistics from this table, the anomalies that it has found, right? We can simply ask Collate to go ahead and create those data quality tests, right? So that's what we did with our prompt right here, and we can see that AskCollate is starting to generate data quality test case based on the context that it has available to cover those anomalies that it has found in the previous test. Okay, so we can see that it went ahead and generated multiple data quality tests, right? It will give us a summary of what it added, why it added it, and which dimension of data quality it has covered, right? So think about completeness, validity, and whatnot. And so we can simply go ahead and click on our table, refresh it, and then we can see that we have a batteries of tests that have been created. And then if we're filtering for unit price tests, we can see that we have a suite of data quality tests that have been generated, including a unit price range. So we can see that quickly in a few minutes, we're able to go from investigation to resolution and to remediation with AskCollate. And now I will pass it on to Harsha that is going to cover the last step in AskCollate.
All right, thanks, Teddy. I hope you can see my screen. We all know the real work happens in Slack. Whatever we showed, it's cool, but I think the chaos and the work happens in Slack. So all the goodness that you have seen, what we have showed so far, can be achieved through video working as well. Most of our data team, most of our data users, probably talking about what's happening to my pipeline today. Can you give me the customer lifetime value? All of these questions can be asked to AskCollate right from the Slack. So we started some threads already, but to make the demo easier, while that is happening, I can ask the question of, show me customers' data. Roughly, I don't know where the customer data is. I'm just asking AskCollate to do that. So while it's doing its thinking, let's proceed on to the threads that we have done. So in this case, Pere asked, do we have any certified assets in Snowflake, right? Are there any gold and silver and bronze certifications? So it's using AskCollate right here, all the context it has. It's able to give you all the tables, what's the column count, when it's last updated, all the necessary information that I need. And also there's a handy link. I can just click on it, go there, and kind of find more details. And you can actually have further conversations. I'm not going to stop here. I want to kind of have more conversations about Customer 360 seems what I want, what data we have around this, right? So it's able to show that it's actually view. It's coming from this particular schema and the database. When actually tagged, what is the tiering, all the information that we need from a data assets part of it. You can also look at what is kind of handy details of what is upstream, what are the upstream assets that are influencing this particular product. And you can go on understanding more details about the Customer 360 table right here in the Slack. Now, what happens if I'm actually looking at, I'm a business user, I do not know where the data is, what the concepts are, and I deal with customer lifetime value. There's something metric I need to report. I'd like to have it in weekly basis. Someday I came in and I just asked, can you provide me with the customer lifetime value? And again, without knowing any context of the data, where the data is stored and everything else. Now, what AskCollate did is it's actually found the right table for me. And it showed me that the columns in it. And it also kind of found related terms, metrics, and dashboards. If there is an existing dashboard, I don't need to do, again, my whole work today. I can actually find the link and go there, find the value, and report it to whoever I need to send it to, right? And the other things with the class returns and everything else, what is the metric? Where are we kind of putting the truth of this metric in itself? All of these details right here handily kind of provided. Now, not just satisfied with what the assets that I found, which is great, but I want the data in itself. Now we are progressing from metadata discovery and understand where the values are, what are the definitions, what are the tables that we have and dashboard we have, to actually getting the data in itself. So when I ask this question, it's able to retrieve the data in itself. But interestingly, it also noticed there are data quality issues, which is all the metric fields that I needed to calculate this particular, the metric, total orders, total revenue, containing null values, which is not great. Only the customer is in segmented classification of the pop rate, which means this is not the very well-maintained table that we have, and we only have one table of such, and showed me, hey, all these details are showing me a bad data here, and the SQL query that it is actually used to generate the data. Now, as a user of this data, I can go and proceed, hey, who owns the customer lifetime value data? Because there seems to be something wrong. I need this data. I can start kind of having conversations with that particular person's right here. So I can tag them, bring them into this conversation saying that, hey, why are we not maintaining customer lifetime value? This is the metric that drives quarterly performance or whatnot. Now, on the other side of the equations are like, show me customers' data, giving me all these tables that I have. I can ask more details. Live typing is fun. So while it's doing, again, the interaction with AskCollate and the OpenMetadata knowledge graph is so inherently easy, and it gives you the context where you're working and becomes a lot more easier. So now imagine there is an incident going on, data quality that we have shown so far. You can just tag the AskCollate with that particular conversation and get relevant details, such as, hey, where this particular test case is failing. Are there any sample data issues? Are there any test issues? Are there any pipeline that ran slowly or didn't run today? So all of these details where you get inundated with all of these messages right in Slack. Now you can use AskCollate to help you out and quickly get to the RC of that. While we are talking about this, it's actually showing me, like, when I ask for a customer's table, what is the schema? What are the DBT models that is actually doing? Actually, it's coming from 3 staging tables right here, and a summary of this, and including data quality details right here. So I don't need to kind of leave my working space or working with my colleagues right here and ask that tag, maybe in this case study, hey, what's going on with this failed test case? So again, making this collaborative effort where you're working on bringing all the greatness of AskCollate, not just through the interface that we developed in the Collate, but also into Slack where you're working with. I think that what concludes my demo for today with Slack. After you, Nick.